Okay, welcome everyone to this deep dive.
Good to be here.
Today we're, opening up some excerpts from a market report. It's focused on the global Hawthorn Tincture Market.
Right. Looking at growth trends shaping its future.
Exactly. Our mission really is just to pull out the key insights from this data you shared,
hmm
understand where the growth is, what's driving it.
And the source makes it pretty clear this isn't some small corner of the wellness world anymore. I mean, it's showing consistent, pretty solid growth.
Yeah.
And the report, it links this directly to people wanting more natural health benefits, and just rising demand globally for herbal supplements generally.
Absolutely, and the overall numbers really tell that story, don't they?
Mhm.
Globally, we're looking at a market valued at $171 million back in 2021.
Hmm.
By 2025, it's projected to hit $220 million.
Okay.
And then looking further out, say 2033, it's expected to reach $364.1 million.
Wow. That's quite a jump.
It is. Over that whole period, that works out to a global CAGR of 6.5%.
Right. And maybe we should just quickly clarify DKGR, compound annual growth rate.
Good point.
It basically smooths out the yearly ups and downs, gives you that average annual growth pace over the whole time. So a clearer picture of the underlying trend.
Perfect explanation. So 6.5% is that global pulse. Now let's unpack this a bit, region by region, starting with North America.
Sounds good.
The report calls this out as one of the, consistently strongest areas.
Yeah, it is. In North America, the revenue grows from $65.5 million in 2021, projected up to $126.7 million by 2033.
Okay.
So the regional CIGR there is 5.6%.
Right, 5.6%. But what's interesting, I think, is when you dig into the country level within that,
Mm-hmm.
the U.S. is clearly the giant in terms of size, right? It's expected to be $96.6 million of that North American total by 2033.
Yeah, the lion's share.
But its growth rate, the CAGR, is 5.3%, so actually slightly below the regional average.
And that's where you see countries like Canada maybe picking up some steam.
Exactly.
They're showing stronger momentum, growing at a 7% CGR. I mean, to put that in perspective, their market is set to more than double between 2021 and 2033. It goes from $7.8 million up to $17.7 million.
That's significant.
And then Mexico's doing well, too, contributing solid growth, actually matching the global CAGR 6.5%, expected to hit $12.4 million by 2033.
So North America, mature, strong, but still varied paces.
Yep.
You've got the big, steady U.S., but faster growth in Canada and Mexico.
Well put.
Okay, let's shift gears. Let's cross the Atlantic to Europe.
Right. Europe's another really significant market. The report shows its value going from $49.6 million in 2021
Okay.
up to $101.6 million by 2033. So that's driven by a regional CGR of 6.2%.
6.2%. And again, looking within Europe, who are the key players? The UK seems to be growing quite well, briskly, 7.5% per CAGR.
Yeah, the UK's strong. Germany's also a major contributor. Their CAGR is 7%, and they're projected to reach $24.3 million by 2033.
Okay.
The source also mentions France, Italy, Russia, all looking at markets around, over $10 million each by 2033. France, $9.8 million, Italy, $9.9 million, Russia, $14.3 million.
So sizable markets there, too.
Definitely. And what's also kind of telling is looking at the other end, like Luxembourg is mentioned.
Okay.
It posts the lowest CAGR in the region at just 3.6%.
Mm.
So it just shows even within a region like Europe, the pace isn't, uniform everywhere.
At regional variation, it's definitely a key theme emerging here.
Absolutely.
Now, here's where, for me, the report gets really interesting. We start seeing some major acceleration. Let's dive into Asia-Pacific.
Okay, yeah. This is described as a high-growth region.
High growth is right. Market value projected to nearly triple, from $37.3 million in 2021,
Wow.
soaring to $93.6 million by 2033.
And that huge growth gives Asia-Pacific the highest regional CAGR in the whole report. It's 7.9%.
7.9%. And who's leading that charge?
Well, China is leading the pack in terms of size, growing at 8% CAGR.
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.
Leading that charge.
Well, China is leading the pack in terms of size, growing at 8% CAGR, expected to account for a massive $43.4 million by 2033.
Okay, 8% is huge.
Which is, more than double its 2025 value, apparently.
But the real outlier here, maybe the most surprising number I saw in the source, India.
Oh, yeah, India stands out.
Stands out is an understatement. It's got the highest individual country CAGR globally, a remarkable 10%.
10%, that's really moving.
Its market is projected to grow from $4.6 million in 2021 up to $14.5 million by 2033. That kind of speed? You have to pay attention to that.
Absolutely. And Australia is also showing strong momentum, 9.2% CAGR,
Right.
while other places like Japan, South Korea, Southeast Asia, they maintain really healthy growth too, kind of in that 6.8% to 7.3% range.
So, Asia Pacific.
Mhm.
Clearly a rapidly expanding frontier for Hawthorn tincture.
No question.
Okay, moving down South America, the picture there also shows some promising acceleration.
It does. Brazil's the main player there, projected to more than double its market size. Goes from $4.3 million in 21
Right.
to $9.1 million by 2033. That's a 7.4% CAGR.
Okay, strong.
And Argentina follows pretty closely, actually surprisingly, showing a slightly higher CAGR at 7.6%, reaching $4.2 million by 2033.
Interesting. So slightly faster growth rate, but smaller overall market than Brazil.
Exactly. And then you've got others like Colombia, Peru, Chile also contributing to that regional growth. They're projected around $1.9 million, $1.6 million, and $1.6 million respectively by 2033.
Got it. Okay, and finally, let's just quickly touch on the Middle East and Africa.
Right. The report describes growth here as moderate but promising.
Okay.
Egypt, for instance, is expected to more than double its market size, growing from just $0.9 million in 2021
Small base.
to $2.3 million by 2033. But that's still a CAGR of 6.9%.
Still respectable growth.
Yeah. And Turkey and the rest of the Middle East also shows steady progress, growth rates around 6.3% to 6.6% EGR. Their 2033 revenues are projected at $1.3 million and $3.1 million.
So smaller markets overall compared to the others, but still growing, still showing opportunity.
Precisely. Indicates increasing penetration even there.
Okay, so we've seen the global path, the steady pace in mature markets like North America and Europe, and then this significant acceleration in Asia Pacific and South America.
Yep.
And this source doesn't just give us the numbers, does it? It
Right.
pulls together the core reasons why this is all happening.
That's right. It really pinpoints three main drivers. First, and maybe the biggest globally, is just that increasing consumer preference for natural remedies. People want natural options.
Makes sense.
Second is rising health awareness. Just generally, across different places, people are being more proactive about their health.
Mhm.
And third is expanding access. Just easier to get hold of herbal supplements globally, better retail, online's huge. Maybe regulations are changing too.
And when you look at those drivers and then think back to the regional numbers we just talked about, it starts to paint a picture for you listening.
Yeah.
It suggests this preference for natural health, this awareness, this access.
Yeah.
It's playing out differently across the world.
Exactly.
Maybe it's like a long-standing trend just getting deeper in North America and Europe,
Yeah.
but maybe it's a newer, more explosive trend hitting places in Asia Pacific or South America where perhaps access is suddenly improving fast or health campaigns are really hitting home.
I think that's a great way to put it. It really underscores that, while the desire for natural health might be global, the actual speed and scale of its impact on a specific market like Hawthorn tincture, well, that can be dramatically influenced by local stuff.
Like culture?
Economics.
Yeah, cultural acceptance, economic development, the whole regulatory environment.
Yeah.
It all plays a part.
Okay, so let's try and wrap up this deep dive into the report. The global Hawthorn tincture market. Clearly on a strong, sustained upward path. That seems undeniable from the data.
Agreed. We're seeing that steady, significant value in the mature markets, North America, Europe.
Right.
But the real acceleration, those higher growth rates, are definitely happening in regions like Asia Pacific and South America.
And that whole trajectory is fundamentally pushed by that mix of things we mentioned. People wanting natural remedies, being more health aware, and just having better access to these supplements.
That's the core story the data tells. So given how different those growth rates really are between regions, that contrast between the high CAGRs in Asia Pacific, South America versus the somewhat lower, though still solid, rates in North America and Europe. Here's a thought maybe to leave you with.
Okay.
What does this difference in growth patterns maybe tell us about the cultural significance or perhaps the sort of typical adoption life cycle of natural health products like Hawthorn tincture as they spread across different parts of the world? Does it follow a set pattern?
That's a really interesting question to ponder based on this data. Okay, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a really specific but surprisingly dynamic corner of the wellness market. We're digging into the Hawthorn Tincture Market. We've been looking through, excerpts from a market research report, and our goal really is to unpack the key drivers, the real challenges, and what's emerging, sort of the trends shaping this space where traditional remedies meet modern health.
Yeah, and it's genuinely fascinating when you look at this report, how something like hawthorn, an old herbal remedy, is finding new life
Yeah.
and adapting, to
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
herbal remedy is finding new life
Yeah.
and adapting, to what consumers want now and how things get distributed. It's a great little case study, actually.
Right. So let's unpack this. What does the report say is the main thing really driving growth right now?
Well, the core driver they really point to is this growing preference for natural cardiovascular support. People are actively looking for things like hawthorn tincture because of its traditional use, for heart health. Things like perceived benefits for circulation or helping maintain healthy blood pressure.
Wow.
And this taps right into that bigger trend we see everywhere. Herbal, traditional medicines gaining traction, moving beyond just niche stores.
Into health food stores, naturopathic clinics.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense. And building on that, the report also really highlights the strong consumer demand for clean label stuff, organic supplements.
I know.
You see that everywhere, but it's really hitting here. People want products, free from artificial additives, preservatives, that kind of thing. And this is pushing brands, the Hawthorn brands, to innovate, getting organic certifications, creating alcohol-free versions.
Right, using glycerin maybe
Yeah.
instead of alcohol.
Exactly, that glycerin base, which is like a sweet plant-derived liquid, and making sure things are vegan to meet those specific demands.
But like any good market analysis, the report shows it's not all smooth sailing. There are hurdles. And this is where it gets quite interesting, actually. What are the main challenges the report flags?
Well, a big one they point to is the lack of standardization in the industry, and frankly, the need for a more robust, modern clinical research, specifically on these finished Hawthorn products. I mean, there's a long history of use, sure, but that rigorous validation, the kind doctors or regulators look for, it can be, well, inconsistent.
Absolutely. And that lack of standardization, it links right to a key safety concern in the report, which is the potential for drug interactions. Hawthorn's thought to affect the cardiovascular system, right? So combining it with common meds that also do that, like certain beta blockers, nitrates, well, you need caution, you need guidance, which is tough without clearer data on dosage and effects.
And the report didn't ignore the practical stuff either, did it? The logistics, like tinctures often having a shorter shelf life than pills and being sensitive to things like temperature or light.
Adds complexity. Manufacturing, storage, getting it to people. Yeah.
Exactly. But even with those barriers, the report does show some really promising trends where the market might be going. One interesting area is mixing hawthorn into formulas not just for the heart, but for stress and sleep support too.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, as mental wellness becomes a bigger part of that whole holistic health picture, you see products combining hawthorn with, say, valerian or passion flower, kind of a multi-benefit thing.
That feels smart. Broadens the appeal, ties into other goals people have. The report also mentioned those innovations like alcohol-free formats again, right? The vegan options we touched on.
Yes, exactly, like those glycerin-based ones, which opens the market up to people avoiding alcohol for whatever reason, health, religion, lifestyle, or even for kids, potentially.
Right. And you can't ignore e-commerce, can you? Subscription bosses.
No way. Game changer.
Totally changing distribution, putting curated kits, seasonal plans right in people's hands. It's revolutionizing reach. So what's the takeaway here? The so what for you listening? I think this Hawthorn Tincture Market is just a great little microcosm. It shows how these traditional practices are adapting, innovating, and navigating the challenges to meet what today's conscious consumer is looking for. It's a balancing act between that historical potential and the practical scientific realities of the modern market.
Absolutely. And as plant-based wellness just keeps growing, and it is significantly, this market really makes you think, doesn't it? It raises an important question for everyone involved. Consumers, manufacturers, researchers, what responsibility do we all share in making sure both the potential benefits, the efficacy, and the safety side of things like hawthorn are really clearly understood and communicated, something to keep mulling over.
And just to note, this particular market insight based on the material we reviewed, was presented by Cognitive Market Research.
Right. And with that thought-provoking question, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Thanks so much for joining us.
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.